Number 10. In January 2022, Shaun Weiss celebrated 2 years of sobriety. Unfortunately, the Mighty Ducks star has had a rough time, who you might not recognize these days since he's 43 years old. The child actor played the goalie Greg Goldberg in the original Mighty Ducks movie in 1992 and the following films throughout the 90s. But between then and now, a whole lot went wrong, mainly hard times and too much meth. Shaun was arrested in 2018 for public intoxication, sentenced to 90 days in county jail for possession of meth, and 150 days for stealing merchandise from an electronics store. The teen star was reduced to stealing from department stores just to buy his drugs in his later years. Then he was arrested in January 2020 for breaking into a man's house while he was blitzed out of his mind. He hit complete rock bottom, sick and mentally ill. Everybody gave up on him, and he was left pretty much toothless and housed in an assisted living program. These days, Shaun is doing much better. He doesn't look quite as ragged as he did for the past few years, and he even got himself a new set of teeth since the meth rotted out all his natural ones. Number 9. Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown was a Disney child star who grew up in the public eye not too long ago, and just like Shaun Weiss, he also went from a Disney prodigy to absolute rock bottom. If you're not sure who Orlando is, then you were probably born too late for That's So Raven and Family Matters. But he also starred in The Jamie Foxx Show and voice acted for Fillmore and The Proud Family. Orlando played in quite a lot of things, from Major Payne in 1995 to Straight Outta Compton in 2015. His problem started in 2008 when he vanished for 24 hours and missed a day of meetings. And that was just the beginning. Drugs, violence, and run-ins with the law followed. In 2016, he got in trouble for punching his girlfriend in the face in a parking lot in Torrance, California. Next, he was busted with methamphetamine and brought up on charges of possession with the intent to sell. This was bad news, considering that Brown had gotten a DUI and was already tangled in the justice system just years earlier. Then, in 2018, he was taken into custody because he never showed up for his court date. Fast forward to 2021, Orlando Brown turned his life around. He graduated from a treatment center, is totally sober, and turned himself into a faith-based rapper dedicated to Jesus. Number 8. Jonshel Alexander. Jonshel Alexander was 22 years old when she died in 2021. Jonshel was just a kid being cast in the movie Beasts of the Southern Wild 10 years before. This low-budget film, directed by Ben Zeitlin, turned into a major hit. Alexander played the character of Joy Strong, and the movie was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. This propelled the 12-year-old girl straight into the spotlight. Sadly, the spotlight faded. The child star went on with her life, never had another role, and her popularity dried up. She became just another Louisiana native trying to live her life. Then, as she was sitting in a car with a man on a Saturday night in New Orleans, an unidentified person walked up and shot her to death through the window. It's been over a year, we still don't know who killed her, why she was specifically targeted by a deranged gunman, or what's happening. The story blew up for about 3 days, the news cycle carried on, and there hasn't been a single update on the case since. Once a promising star, now an unsolved murder case. Number 7. Jake Lloyd. Jake Lloyd played Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, which came out in 1999. But Jake had made his acting debut 3 years earlier on the TV show ER at just 7 years old. He also was in the movie Apollo 11, in the Christmas hit Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and in the TV show The Pretender. He had a whirlwind career until he was about 10 years old. Then, after playing Anakin, his career basically imploded. It was the beginning of the end. The last thing he would do as a professional actor was the voice of Anakin in the video game Star Wars: Racer Revenge in 2002. When asked why he vanished from the spotlight, Jake said it was because he got bullied at school for being Anakin Skywalker, probably by jealous kids who wished they could have been in Star Wars instead. But then, after school, Jake was pretty much unremarkable. He did nothing of any interest and didn't get any time in the news, at least not until 2015. That was when the police were called to his mom's house because Jake had first verbally assaulted her, then beat her up. It turned out Jake had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and had turned abusive against his mother. He was off his meds and out of his mind. Later that same year, he was arrested in South Carolina for reckless driving. He got into a car chase with the cops that only ended when he crashed into some trees. He then spent 10 months in jail before being transferred to a psychiatric facility. Number 6. Tom Guiry. Tom Guiry, the former child star who played in the hit movie The Sandlot as the character Scott Smalls back in 1993, has found himself in quite a bit of trouble. After the movie, he never really had much success, but he certainly made headlines in 2013. He was arrested for headbutting a police officer at the Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. According to the Houston Chronicle, it started at about 6:45 p.m. United Airlines called the cops because a passenger was too wasted to fly. What happened next was an alcohol-fueled fit. As the cops tried to give him a break to see if they could get him sober enough to just go on with his business, he wanted to fight them. He attempted to kick an officer in the face, missed, then headbutted him instead. Tom was promptly arrested and carried out of the airport. Later, he posted a $5,000 bail and was let out. It was the most attention Tom had gotten since the 90s. Number 5. Henry Thomas. Henry Thomas started his career with one of the biggest movies in cinema history. He was the kid from E.T., the extraterrestrial, in 1982. As a young kid in the 80s, Henry was not prepared for what was about to happen to him. He was inducted into fame pretty much against his will and thrown into the spotlight. People would scream at him on the street and point and say, "Hey, it's the kid from E.T." But his career came to a slow and painful halt because of his mother. She was labeled as difficult to work with, and that rubbed off on Henry. He couldn't get the significant roles he wanted and had to star in small-time family affairs. Then, when Henry turned 18, he made a dramatic switch to R-rated movies. He starred in Murder 1, Valmont, and even a third sequel to the 1960 Alfred Hitchcock movie, Psycho. Henry appeared in Gangs of New York and Legends of the Fall in more recent memory, but he never really reached stardom as he did in 1982. Plus, he turned into an ordinary adult with his own crummy problems. In 2019, at 48 years old, the former child star was booked into the Washington County Jail. He was caught driving drunk in Oregon. The police received a call about a car that was just sitting on the road, not going anywhere. When the police officers arrived, they found Thomas slumped in the front seat, totally wasted. Number 4. Joey Gaydos Jr. Joey Gaydos Jr. played Zach Mooneyham in the 2003 movie School of Rock. It's arguably one of Jack Black's most significant films of all time, and he shows up to teach a bunch of youngsters how to rock and roll. But there's not much rock and roll in Joey's life these days. In 2019, at 27 years old, he faced charges of theft in Florida. Joey got caught in 4 separate incidents, stealing guitars and selling them in pawn shops. What makes this so ironic is that Joey played a musician in the 2003 movie. He also considers himself a musician and a serious guitarist, and maybe that was why he felt compelled to walk into shops ask to test a specific guitar, and then run away with it. He stole a Gibson Les Paul worth $1,900 and a Fender Stratocaster worth $700. He also stole some guitar amps and ripped off his father. According to the police, Joey was stealing this stuff to feed his drug addiction. Sadly, Joey never starred in another movie. His role in School of Rock would be his only one, and while we don't know exactly what happened since the movie came out in 2003, it looks like Joey has gone down a dangerous path of drugs, theft, and time in jail. Number 3. Amanda Bynes. In 2014, Amanda Bynes was arrested for a DUI, but it was hardly her first encounter with the law. In just 12 months, the child star threw a bong out of an apartment window, completed 4 months in rehab, got a DUI, and then became a fashionable college student. The incident with the bong happened in May 2013 and ended with her being arrested, but the charges were ultimately dropped. Then, 3 months later, she started a fire out on the driveway of some house in California, and then was arrested carrying her pet dog into a store covered in gasoline. That was when she spent the 3 months rehabilitating herself in the psychiatric treatment center. Amanda Bynes became wildly famous as a kid in the 1990s and 2000s. She starred in her own show. Amanda's been in plenty of movies, but she's kind of become a train wreck as an adult. She has a face tattoo, which she is in the process of removing. She's hardly recognizable these days. And in 2022, a rather disturbing nude photo of Amanda appeared online. However, Amanda denies the nude photograph of her in a bathtub is indeed her, and says it's some random woman trying to ruin her life. Basically, Amanda's only fame these days is not being all over the tabloids. Number 2. Drake Bell. Drake Bell starred in shows on Nickelodeon like Drake and Josh. He was a big name for a long time, but not anymore. In 2021, he was given 2 years of probation and ordered to complete 200 hours of community service. At 35 years old, he was making some pretty poor decisions. You might call Drake an outright disgusting piece of trash, because Drake didn't get caught drinking and driving. He wasn't in a domestic dispute. Instead, he was brought up on a felony charge of attempting to endanger a child. Drake was busted and pleaded guilty to exchanging messages with a minor. It really doesn't get any more disgusting than that. Once a child star, and now a pervert on the loose. He should have been thrown in jail but got away with nothing but probation and some lousy community service. As for the case, it gets pretty outrageous. The victim claimed she began exchanging messages with Drake online back in 2017. She was only 15 years old. He was a grown man. The messages eventually became wildly inappropriate. Then, after she attended one of his concerts, he took her backstage, and the two got physical. After the incident, the victim realized the situation wasn't appropriate, so she went to the police and filed a report in 2018, and now Drake is forever shamed as a deviant and will probably never get work again. Number 1. Lindsay Lohan. It would take far too long to list everything Lindsay Lohan has ever been in. She was a star from a young age, appearing in everything from Freaky Friday to Mean Girls. But as Lindsay got older, her life got more complicated. There's no child celebrity more synonymous with the word train wreck than Lindsay Lohan. Her first arrest came in May 2007. She was busted driving drunk and being in possession of cocaine. She lost control of her Mercedes-Benz and crashed in Beverly Hills. After her arrest, she went to rehab. She was released after 45 days. And in July of that same year, she got busted driving under the influence yet again. She was caught chasing after a woman with her vehicle after they had gotten into an intoxicated argument. This was just 2 weeks after she left rehab. And the charges keep mounting. In 2011, Lindsay received a charge of felony grand theft for stealing a $2,500 necklace from a jewelry store in Venice. She was given 120 days in jail, but released after just spending 5 hours in prison. Talk about a star treatment. She was arrested again in 2012 for a hit and run after she ran somebody over in front of a New York hotel. But again, she escaped all charges and any punishment. The only good news is that Lindsay never really got in any more major trouble after that. And these days, she seems to be just minding her own business and staying out of the spotlight. Number 9. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Award-winning American boxer Floyd Mayweather Jr. ended his 21-year career with an undefeated record when he retired in 2017. He's widely considered one of the best boxers of all time, not only in his class, but across the entire board, and his success has brought him both fame and fortune. In 2018, Mayweather was ranked as the world's highest-paid athlete, with his total earnings valued at $285 million. In 2021, he was rated as the 6th highest-paid athlete of all time, with his career earnings estimated at $1.2 billion. But Mayweather's success has not been without controversy. During the early 2000s, he was convicted in misdemeanor battery cases involving 2 women. He also faced a battery charge for allegedly assaulting a bouncer. In 2010 and 2011, he became entangled in a drawn-out court case in connection with domestic violence allegations brought by his ex-wife and the mother of 3 of his 4 children, Josie Harris. While many were willing to overlook Mayweather's legal issues in order to maintain their idyllic vision of the champion fighter, those who paid attention to the legal proceedings were met with a disturbing slew of allegations. According to one criminal complaint, Mayweather harmed Harris in front of his children and threatened to do the same thing to them if they dialed 911 or sought help, which Harris was yelling for them to do. For some people, the allegations of domestic violence were enough to earn their disapproval of Mayweather. Others drew the line when they found out that there were children supposedly involved. Mayweather took a plea deal and admitted to misdemeanor battery in exchange for getting a felony battery charge dropped. He also pleaded no contest to 2 counts of misdemeanor harassment in connection with the alleged threats against his children. The judge sentenced him to 90 days in jail and ordered him to attend a domestic violence education program. In the years since, Mayweather has continued to make headlines for his behavior, including diva-like outbursts in public and alleged displays of arrogance. Some have even described him as an all-out egomaniac. In December 2014, the New York Daily News reported that the boxer threw a so-called pissy fit when a saleswoman at Saks Fifth Avenue refused to let him use a bathroom that had been cordoned off for a special event. Mayweather allegedly called the staff member the B word and shoved her, prompting the young woman to dial 911. While it's unclear whether Mayweather was still at the store when cops showed up, there were no witnesses to corroborate the employee's claims, and therefore no arrests were made. In 2017, Mayweather allegedly called Justin Bieber a traitor for unfollowing him on Instagram, with sources telling TMZ that the boxer went insane and nuclear when he discovered that he had been snubbed by the Beeb. Despite these and other instances of erratic outbursts, along with more recent allegations of participating in a cryptocurrency pump and dump scheme, the indisputably talented yet controversial athlete remains widely admired in the world of professional boxing. Number 8. Chris Brown. American singer-songwriter Chris Brown is one of those celebrities who has managed to avoid being completely shunned from the spotlight, despite his questionable behavior over the years, most likely due to the fact that he's undeniably talented. He first made headlines for his alleged short temper in 2009, when he was accused of beating up his then-girlfriend, pop singer Rihanna. Fans were shocked when photos of the songstress with severe facial injuries appeared in the press, and Brown later pleaded guilty to felony assault in connection with the case. The judge sentenced him to 5 years of probation and ordered him to undergo domestic violence counseling. During a Larry King Live interview later that year, Brown expressed shock over the incident, stating that it didn't reflect the person he wanted to be. The singer's probation was revoked in 2013 following an alleged hit-and-run in Los Angeles. The charges came on the heels of several other questionable incidents, including a hostile run-in with Drake's entourage in New York City and an alleged violent confrontation with musician Frank Ocean over a parking space in LA. While Brown managed to escape long-term accountability in these cases, including the hit-and-run, he was less fortunate when it came to a felony assault allegation he faced in October 2013. Brown was accused of punching a man in the face after refusing to take a photo with him. He pleaded guilty to a reduced misdemeanor charge and voluntarily entered rehab. A judge ordered him to remain in rehab for a certain amount of time in order to avoid going to jail, but he was kicked out of the program about a month before he would have fulfilled his requirement. He was ordered to spend 365 days in jail with credit for time served in rehab, during which time he was reportedly diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. Brown finished his probation in 2015, but landed in legal hot water again in August 2016 when a woman dialed 911 and accused him of threatening her with a gun at his residence. According to authorities, he refused to let LAPD officers into the home without a warrant. When they returned with a warrant, he allegedly continued to deny them entry into his home, resulting in what news sources described as a standoff. Prosecutors declined to pursue the charges, and the case was dropped. In the meantime, Brown chastised the media for what he described as false allegations that he had barricaded himself inside his house. He later sued his accuser and won after incriminating text messages about setting him up were found in the woman's phone. Brown went into further detail about the assault against Rihanna in the 2017 documentary Welcome to My Life. In the film, Brown said that he was planning on marrying Rihanna, but that she lost trust in him after discovering that he had lied about her previous relationship. Things apparently snowballed from there, culminating in the infamous encounter that the world still has not forgotten about, even though Brown's career managed to bounce back from the incident. In 2022, a woman sued Brown for allegedly assaulting her on a yacht off the Miami coast. He submitted text messages to authorities indicating that the encounter was consensual, and the case was ultimately dropped. Brown's latest controversy came in early 2023 when he threw a fit on social media after losing out on a Grammy Award to fellow musician Robert Glasper. Brown posted an Instagram story featuring a photo of Glasper and a caption stating, "Y'all playing, who the F is this?" followed by, "I'ma keep kicking y'all, respectively. He also posted an image along with a caption stating, "Who the bleep is Robert Glasper?" The bitter musician then reposted a TikTok video showcasing his ticket sales, chart ratings, and other accomplishments. Glasper took the insulting posts with a grain of salt and took a humorous approach, writing in one of his own posts that people have questions about who TF he is. A few days later, Brown posted a screenshot of a direct message he sent to Glasper, congratulating the musician for his achievements. Brown also apologized for his reaction over the Grammy Award and claimed that Glasper wasn't the intended target, even though his angry post made it very clear that Glasper was the intended target. Brown went on to say that he respected Glasper's work, that the two men should be classified in two different genres because their music is nothing alike, and that he wishes Glasper the best. Many criticized Brown for what seemed like a half-hearted apology and a failure to truly own his actions, but most can probably agree that it was better than nothing. More than anything, the outburst proved that Brown still has the notoriously short temper he first became known for nearly 15 years earlier. Number 7. Courtney Love. Even if you weren't around yet during the early 90s or weren't old enough to remember anything that went on during that time, you've most likely heard of the band Nirvana. Their music has transcended generations in a way that makes them iconic even today, nearly 30 years after the untimely death of lead singer Kurt Cobain in 1994. Rewind to just a few years earlier, and Cobain's future looked promising despite his troubled past and his struggles with living in the spotlight. In early 1992,
1992, he married Courtney Love, the lead singer of an alternative rock band called Hole, which was successful in its own right, even if it didn't go down in history the way Nirvana has. 9 months after tying the knot, the couple welcomed their daughter into the world. By then, an article had come out detailing Kurt and Courtney's alleged drug use during her pregnancy, and social services petitioned to remove the child from their custody. The court ruled that the couple needed supervision in their child's presence, so they had relatives and nannies move in with them as a way to keep their daughter in the home full-time. They were still under court supervision when Kurt Cobain passed away at the couple's Seattle home in 1994. In the handful of years following his death, Courtney found herself in and out of drug rehab. Her behavior became increasingly self-destructive and included at least one instance of exposing herself to a complete stranger on a sidewalk. She also became known for her short temper in a series of alleged public outbursts, including a fight with an air stewardess in early 1995. A few months later, Courtney was accused of throwing a lit cigarette at musician Kathleen Hanna during the Lollapalooza Festival in Washington. She pleaded guilty to assault and was ordered to attend anger management. Love was also sued by 2 young men who accused her of punching them during a concert, but the judge dropped the case after concluding that the plaintiffs were exposed to the amount of violence that they could reasonably expect at an alternative rock performance. Love would later say that she barely remembered the years 1994 and 1995 because of the heavy amounts of heroin and other drugs she was using at the time. Between 1994 and 2004, Love was romantically linked with numerous big-name musicians, including Smashing Pumpkins frontman Billy Corgan, 9 Inch Nails mastermind Trent Reznor, and award-winning actor Edward Norton. In the meantime, Courtney's own musical success took a turn for the worse, with her 2004 solo album America's Sweetheart dropping off the Billboard charts just 4 weeks after its debut. Love has also dealt with speculation among Nirvana fans that Kurt Cobain was murdered. She was in rehab in Los Angeles at the time of his death, but those who are convinced that Cobain met with foul play have accused her of being involved. These allegations have persisted into the modern era, with filmmaker Ian Halperin calling on Courtney to take a polygraph to clear her name as recently as 2023. In his book, Case Closed: The Cobain Murder, The Killing and Cover-Up of Kurt Cobain, Halperin insists that he's not specifically accusing anyone of murder, but that he thinks a lie detector test could help set the record straight on Courtney's behalf. He even offered to pay for the test and, if the results deem that she's being truthful, to pay for a billboard in Times Square proclaiming Love's innocence. Number 6. Oscar Pistorius. In 2012, South African sprint runner Oscar Pistorius became the first double amputee in history to compete in Olympic track events. Nicknamed the Blade Runner, he was born without a fibula in both legs and underwent a double amputation below the knee at a young age. He enjoyed a swift rise to freedom, but the short amount of time he spent in the spotlight for good reasons was cut short in 2013 when his girlfriend, model Reeva Steenkamp, was found shot to death in the bathroom of her home in Pretoria. Pistorius told investigators that he shot Steenkamp through a closed bathroom door after mistaking her for an intruder. But investigators remain skeptical about his claim that the shooting was an accident, and the up-and-coming athlete was charged with premeditated murder. Prosecutors accused Pistorius of shooting Steenkamp in a fit of rage after she locked herself in the bathroom during an argument. Pistorius maintained his innocence, but nevertheless admitted to feeling a sense of guilt. He broke down in tears on the stand while apologizing to Steenkamp's family for his tragic error in judgment. Many people remained unmoved by the emotional display, and some even accused Pistorius of taking acting lessons before the trial, which he denied doing. During the proceedings, the defense argued that the disgraced sprinter's actions on the night of Steenkamp's death were influenced by an anxiety disorder. But a team of court-appointed psychiatrists concluded that Pistorius did not suffer from clinical anxiety. Pistorius was found not guilty of premeditated murder in 2014, but was convicted of the lesser charge of culpable homicide. He was released from prison the following year on house arrest and probation. Unsatisfied with the outcome of the case, prosecutors fought the ruling. In 2015, South Africa's top appeals court ruled that Pistorius was guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to 6 years in prison. Once again, prosecutors argued that the sentence was too lenient and took the matter back to court. In 2017, the former runner's sentence was increased to 15 years. He became eligible for parole in 2023, but was denied his freedom and remains behind bars. During the parole hearing, Pistorius' lawyer described his client as a model prisoner, while Reeva Steenkamp's family argued that Pistorius was not rehabilitated or remorseful. They urged the parole board to keep him behind bars, and their wish was granted. Pistorius will revisit the parole board in 2024. Number 5. Britney Murphy. Sharon Murphy believed so strongly in her daughter Britney's star potential that the pair packed everything they owned and moved from New Jersey to Los Angeles in 1991, when Britney was just 13 years old. The teen actress scored her first major role in the 1995 movie Clueless, and her fame only grew from there. Known for her versatility and convincing emotional displays, she went on to star in numerous award-winning films across several genres, including the 1999 drama Girl Interrupted, the 2001 horror flick Don't Say a Word, and the 2003 romantic comedies Just Married and Little Black Book. At the height of her career, Britney was one of the most in-demand actresses in Hollywood, and it looked as though her success was only going to continue on an upward trajectory. Behind the scenes, Britney's life was less than perfect. To those who knew her, it seemed like she struggled with self-esteem issues. Her insecurities were especially evident in the dramatic changes she made to her appearance after she skyrocketed to fame, going from brunette to blonde and shedding weight to the point where she became extremely thin. While it's easy to attribute these changes to the normal transformation that young women in Hollywood often went through during the 90s and often still do today, some of Britney's loved ones began to wonder if she was losing herself in her newfound stardom. Meanwhile, rumors flew about the young starlet allegedly being addicted to cocaine and other drugs, which she adamantly denied. People also became alarmed by Britney's imperiled dating life, which came across to some people in her circle as a pattern of serial dating and a seemingly desperate attempt for long-term companionship. In 2006, after a string of highly public failed relationships, Britney Murphy met British screenwriter Simon Monjack. The two married the following year. From there on out, Britney went from starring in A-list films to landing roles in Lifetime made-for-TV movies and low-budget indie projects. Her increasingly erratic and unreliable on-set behavior gave her a reputation of being difficult to work with, and her husband's constant meddling also dissuaded filmmakers from hiring her. It was clear that Britney's career was going down the tubes, but most people didn't know exactly why. Throughout her marriage to Monjack, she withdrew noticeably from the public eye. On December 20th, 2009, 911 dispatchers received a call that Britney was unresponsive at her home. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but it was too late to save the troubled actress. She was just 32 years old. An autopsy concluded that Britney had died from pneumonia-related complications, with iron deficiency anemia and multiple drug intoxication listed as secondary causes. The findings were met with widespread shock that she hadn't simply overdosed in the throes of addiction. It would later be revealed that Britney had contracted pneumonia in the weeks leading up to her death and never went to the doctor for her symptoms. She was actively ill during her last interview 2 weeks before her death, during which she appeared visibly gaunt. People were further put off by the behavior of Britney's grieving mother, Sharon, and her widower, Monjack, in the months following her death. To many, it seemed like the two were suspiciously close. They admitted to sharing a bed during their toughest times of mourning and posed for photos that seemed to convey an inappropriate degree of intimacy between two in-laws. Just 6 months after Britney's death, Simon Monjack was found dead in the same home, and an autopsy ruled that he had also died from pneumonia. Britney's mother later blamed toxic mold that was found in the residence, while her estranged father blamed heavy metal poisonings. Both were ultimately ruled out as contributing factors. The plain and simple truth is that the couple got sick and failed to seek treatment for it. Since then, many have pointed the finger at Simon Monjack, not for directly killing Britney, but for controlling her every move and isolating her to a point where he may have discouraged her from getting medical treatment. In the bombshell two-part HBO documentary, What Happened, Britney Murphy, acquaintances of the pair described Monjack as a smooth talker who overplayed his accomplishments and had Britney under his spell. Some have even depicted him as a con artist who manipulated his way into Britney's good graces at a low point in her dating life and pushed out her managers and others who were trying to act in her best interests. Many believe that Monjack used the actress for her money and influenced her to make self-destructive choices that led to the downfall of her career and ultimately to her death. While there's no official record on whether any of this is true, this tragic tale serves as a sobering reminder about who we let into our lives, especially at our most vulnerable moments. Number 4. Richard Simmons. American fitness personality Richard Simmons moved to Hollywood in the 1970s with the goal of becoming famous. He set himself apart from other ambitious hopefuls with his flamboyant and forward personality, and by catering to overweight clients rather than people who were already in shape, unlike most exercise studios of the time. Simmons first began to make a name for himself with the opening of his Beverly Hills gym, Simmons. His fame exploded with the creation of his exercise-at-home videos, including Sweatin' to the Oldies, which still holds the #1 spot for the biggest-selling home workout video of all time. In addition to his proven ability to help countless people lose weight, Simmons appealed to consumers by candidly sharing the story of his own weight loss journey. He struggled with childhood obesity and other issues, including a bedwetting problem that lasted into his teens. During an era when it was widely considered acceptable for people to openly judge each other based on their weight, this naturally led to social isolation. There has also been widespread speculation that Richard is gay, although he has never publicly discussed his sexuality. And while many people in today's world pass unfair judgment against homosexuality, the problem was even worse in previous decades. All things considered, Simmons could perhaps be described as somewhat of a tormented soul with a heartbreaking past. On more than one occasion, he described himself as having few friends, stating that he has little to offer one person, but that he has a lot to offer to a lot of people. To many, it seemed like he simply wanted to be accepted for who he was on the inside and out. Others perceived the statement as Simmons saying that he was content with his solitude and felt fulfilled by helping people, even if he rarely got close with anyone. In 2014, Simmons abruptly withdrew from the spotlight, and he hasn't made any public appearances since. Over the following years, rumors speculating about his whereabouts and well-being ran rampant, starting with claims in early 2016 that his housekeeper was holding him hostage. Simmons denied the rumors in an audio interview with The Today Show, but it did little, if anything, to calm the growing concern among the public. The sudden closure of his gym later that year only further fueled gossip about him being in harm's way. There was even a podcast dedicated to the matter, followed by a TMZ documentary several years later. At some point, some people began to wonder if Simmons was still alive. There were also claims that he had undergone a gender reassignment procedure and that he was now living in plain sight as a woman. In 2017, the fitness guru posted a photo of himself on Facebook to prove that he was alive and well. But the picture was traced to origins dating as far back as 2013, and the rumors about Simmons only spun further out of control. He sued several publications for furthering the spread of false claims, as well as a private investigator who allegedly put a tracking device on his car at the behest of In Touch Weekly magazine. In 2022, a TMZ documentary claimed that a knee problem dating back to childhood had forced Simmons out of the spotlight. The film suggested that he voluntarily checked out of the celebrity scene and that nobody was holding him captive. In response to the movie, Simmons issued a statement to the New York Post, reassuring the public that he is happy, healthy, and living the life he has chosen to live. This story should serve as a cautionary tale about how sometimes society makes its mind up about someone and directs that person's narrative without their input. While Simmons could have come forward and proved that he's alive and well by going on camera at any point over the last 9 years, he also shouldn't necessarily have to do that in order to avoid the type of wild speculation that has been cast over his life. Number 3. Jussie Smollett. After first finding success as a child actor in the early 90s, Jussie Smollett went on to play several small but noteworthy roles in various films and TV series. His biggest gig came in 2015 when he was cast in the Fox drama series Empire. On January 29, 2019, during his 4th season starring on the show, Smollett went to the Chicago police with claims that he had been attacked by 2 men who doused him with an unknown chemical while yelling racist and homophobic slurs at him. In his initial report, the actor described one of his alleged attackers as white and the other as African American. He accused them of beating him and wrapping a rope around his neck, and he also claimed that they shouted the Donald Trump slogan, "Make America Great Again." Just days earlier, Smollett had received a letter containing a death threat at the studio where he worked. Smollett's report was initially met with widespread sympathy and support, which is understandable, but if it had actually happened, it would have constituted a horrifying act of bigotry and a hate crime, which happens all too often in modern-day America. But as authorities investigated the incident, they began to suspect that Smollett had staged the encounter in an attempt to garner attention on social media. In the days following the supposed attack, Smollett refused to hand his phone over to investigators who were seeking to corroborate his version of events. But he remained a victim in the eyes of law enforcement and the public at large for several more weeks. On February 17th, roughly 3 weeks after the incident, police arrested brothers Abimbola Osundero and Olabinjo Osundero as persons of interest in the case. It would later be revealed that the pair had worked as extras on the Empire set. A few days later, Smollett was charged with filing a false police report. Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson accused the actor of staging the attack for popularity and because he was dissatisfied with his salary, claiming that Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. Authorities also accused him of sending himself the threatening letter that he received at work days before the alleged assault, and of paying the Osundero brothers $3,500 to stage the attack. The brothers corroborated this version of events and were seen buying supplies in surveillance footage that was captured before the bizarre crime. Smollett maintained his innocence throughout the case. He was suspended from Empire just days after his arrest, and it appeared as though he faced a mounting stack of evidence when, in an unexpected twist, the case was suddenly dropped in March of 2019. But the strange saga was far from over. The Chicago police billed Smollett $130,000 for the resources that went into the investigation, and when he refused to pay it, the city sued him for 3 times the amount. In the meantime, the Osundero brothers sued the actor for defamation, and Fox announced that Smollett would not be returning to Empire. In February 2020, a little more than a year after the incident, the case was reopened, and authorities charged Smollett with 6 criminal counts. Just weeks later, the COVID-19 pandemic gripped the planet, and life as most of the world knew it came to a screeching halt. The case finally went to trial in late 2021 after facing numerous delays, and Smollett was found guilty of 5 felony counts of disorderly conduct. In early 2022, the judge overseeing the case sentenced Smollett to 150 days in jail, followed by 30 months of probation, and ordered him to pay a $145,000 fine. He insisted he was innocent right up until the moment he was let out of court. During the disgraced actor's sentencing hearing, Judge James Lynn said, "There is nothing that I can do here today that can come close to the damage you've already done to your own life." He further stated that Smollett turned his life upside down by way of his own conduct and shenanigans, but Smollett has yet to take responsibility for faking the attack. He was released on bond 6 days later after appealing his case. While Smollett appears hell-bent on absolving himself of any criminal wrongdoing, whether or not his acting career will ever recover also remains to be seen. In the eyes of the court and the media, Smollett is the engineer of an elaborate ruse that destroyed his reputation and possibly his career. But there are some people who continue to support his innocence. Number 2, Danny Masterson. As a child, Danny Masterson appeared in over 100 TV commercials, often promoting sugar-filled treats like Kellogg's Frosted Flakes and Tang. His first major acting gig came in the late 90s when he was cast as Stephen Hyde in That 70s Show. He stayed with the series from the very beginning until the end of its final season in 2006. Masterson went on to star in the series Men at Work from 2012 to 2014, followed by The Ranch from 2016 to 2018. In 2017, 4 women filed serious assault allegations against Masterson, claiming that he did horrific things to them against their will during the early 2000s. They accused the actor of abusing his position within the controversial Church of Scientology to wage a campaign of intimidation against them in an attempt to scare them into staying silent. During the early stages of a 3-year investigation that followed, Masterson's character was written out of The Ranch. He maintained his innocence even as the alleged victims, who were all former members of Scientology, became more vocal with their accusations against him. One woman claimed that her dog died under suspicious circumstances. She also accused members of the church of filming her without her permission, following her, chasing her, and posting perverted casual encounter ads online using her name and personal information. Another woman reported seeing a man snapping photos in her driveway and claimed that someone broke one of the windows to her house later that day. In 2020, Masterson was formally charged in connection with alleged assaults against 3 women dating back to 2001 and 2003. He pleaded not guilty, and his attorney accused the women of conspiring against Masterson. The case went to trial in 2022 and ended in a deadlocked jury. Following a retrial in April and May of 2023, the jury convicted Masterson in 2 cases, while remaining hopelessly deadlocked on the 3rd. Prosecutors have decided not to try the 3rd case again, most likely because Masterson already faces 30 years to life behind bars for the 2 cases he was convicted on. He's scheduled to be sentenced in August or September of 2023. Number 1. Allison Mack. In 1998, a personal development company called NXIVM emerged into existence. Founded by self-help guru Keith Raniere and his business partner Nancy Saltzman, NXIVM offered self-improvement seminars based on a multi-level marketing scheme. This meant that the company's success and the success of its members depended on the constant recruitment of new members and/or the sale of its products. Multi-level marketing is a controversial business method, and in many cases these setups are found to be illegal pyramid schemes. NXIVM was expensive to participate in, but it enjoyed great success in its early years, and it even grew to include several famous people among its ranks. 2 of its most prolific and dedicated members were Seagram heiresses Claire and Sarah Bronfman, who joined NXIVM in the early 2000s. The organization was based roughly 2 hours north of Manhattan in sleepy Albany, New York, but at its peak, its influence extended across the country and beyond. By 2003, there were whispers among journalists about NXIVM possibly being a cult. Claims of this nature first appeared in a Forbes piece that year. Raniere denied the allegations, and NXIVM continued to grow. By the time the second Forbes article against the group came out in 2006, Smallville actress Allison Mack had become a member. Her involvement with NXIVM grew majorly in the coming years. Mack co-founded a subgroup within NXIVM called The Source, which focused on recruiting famous members. She was also a member of the organization's a cappella singing group, Simply Human. Like many other NXIVM members, Mack's life eventually came to revolve around the group's activities, and her acting career took a back seat to her priorities within the organization. As her commitment grew, Mack spent an increasing amount of time in Albany and less time at her home in New York City. On the surface, it would be fair to say that NXIVM had cultish overtones. Over time, the group fell under increased scrutiny that it was an actual cult. In a 2017 expose, the New York Times spoke with former members who claimed that they had been branded as part of their initiation into a secretive subgroup called Dominus Obsequious Sororium, or DOS. Authorities would later claim that Keith Raniere founded DOS in 2015 and appointed Allison Mack as his second-in-command. According to investigators, Allison Mack and several other top-ranking masters recruited female NXIVM members into DOS with claims that it was an elite secret society that focused on empowering women. While Raniere acted as Mack's puppet master, his involvement in directing the group's activities was kept hidden from new recruits who were called slaves. In order to become full-fledged members, women were required to hand over incriminating collateral from their personal lives, like nude photos and other material that could potentially destroy their careers, relationships, and reputations. They were told that if they left DOS or told anyone about its existence, their collateral would be leaked. Recruits were forced to abide by grueling routines centered around sleep deprivation, restrictive diets, and physical punishments. They were told that this was all being done in the name of self-discipline and were berated and talked down to if they struggled to keep up with it. And as the New York Times had claimed, members were branded with a design that covertly featured Keith Raniere's initials, unbeknownst to the recruits themselves. Federal authorities dismantled the NXIVM cult in 2018 by arresting its leaders and highest-ranking members, including Allison Mack, who was accused of trafficking women for Raniere's physical gratification and participating in a forced labor scheme. According to court documents, DOS existed specifically to satisfy Raniere's desires, and Mack knowingly programmed its members into resembling his ideal intimate partner. She also allegedly coerced members into doing things with him that they didn't want to do, but went along with out of the fear of having their collateral exposed or suffering other consequences. All the while, like other NXIVM members, they were being financially bled dry while Raniere, Mack, and other leaders benefited from their payments. Mack ultimately pleaded guilty to federal racketeering and conspiracy counts and admitted to extortion and forced labor under state law. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 3 years of probation, along with 1,000 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay a $20,000 fine. The disgraced actress was released early from prison in 2023 after serving 21 months. Keith Raniere is serving a life sentence, and several other former NXIVM members were also sentenced to prison time.
12. Tekashi 6ix9ine. Brooklyn-born rapper Daniel Hernandez, better known as Tekashi 6ix9ine, exploded onto the music scene in 2017 at the age of 21. And in addition to his music, he quickly became known for his rainbow-colored hair and heavily tattooed face and body. For a while, the young artist's future seemed as bright as his vividly dyed locks, despite his reputation for getting into bitter feuds with other celebrities. He rose to fame even though he had a prior felony conviction for violating a young woman and is a member of the 9 Trey Gangsters, a subset of the infamous Blood Street Gang. Hernandez seemed to relish in his status as a rap supervillain, but the antagonistic persona that helped him rise into the spotlight also played a big role in his fall from stardom. In July of 2018, 3 armed assailants kidnapped Hernandez from outside his home during the early morning hours. They forced him into a vehicle, pistol-whipped him, and stole over $750,000 worth of jewelry and $35,000 in cash before he escaped and flagged down a stranger to call the cops. The attack would eventually be linked to fellow 9 Trey Gangsters member Anthony Harv Ellison. 4 months later, Hernandez was arrested on federal racketeering, drug and weapons counts in connection with his gang activities. He faced a slew of charges, including conspiracy to commit murder and armed robbery. These crimes carried a sentence of 47 years to life if convicted. While being held without bail, he had to be moved to a different jail at least once due to his ongoing altercations with other inmates, including rival gang members. Like many criminal defendants who find themselves caught between a rock and a hard place, Hernandez took a plea deal and admitted to 9 counts. He also broke the #1 rule of gang culture and turned state's witness. In exchange for his cooperation, he received a 2-year prison sentence with credit for time served, far less than the amount of time that was handed down to the people he helped the feds convict. While Hernandez made himself an instant target by cooperating with the authorities, it was essentially the only way he was going to avoid spending a large portion of his adulthood behind bars. Looking at it from that angle, it's understandable that he snitched, but the streets don't forgive, and people were just waiting for vengeance to strike following his release from custody in 2020. In early 2023, Hernandez was brutally attacked by 3 men in the locker room of an LA fitness center in South Florida. In a disturbing video of the beatdown, the attackers could be heard calling the rapper a rat who wouldn't be tolerated in their hood. The trio were later charged with robbery and battery in connection with the assault. In an Instagram post, Hernandez said that he'd been walking around in public without security for 2 years before the attack happened. He further clarified that he wasn't mad about the assault because that's just how street life works. And while the incident undoubtedly stemmed from the musician's very public court case and his decision to snitch, it appeared as though the attackers had no direct connection with Hernandez. He wrote, "Just imagine having nothing to do with the situation and feel obligated to make it your business. Very weird." 11. Bebe Rexha. Fans of the Brooklyn-born singer Bebe Rexha were having a great time watching her perform in Manhattan one evening in 2023, when a disrespectful audience member ruined the entire show by throwing a cell phone in her face. Rexha immediately turned and fell to the floor, and was escorted off stage while covering her injured forehead. The concert was cut short, and witnesses shared photos and footage of the senseless act while expressing concern over Bebe Rexha's well-being. They were also angry toward the person responsible for her injuries. In an Instagram post, the singer shared close-ups of her injuries, which included a black eye, swelling, redness, and cuts to her face that required stitches. Regardless, though, she reassured her followers that she was okay. Authorities charged a 27-year-old New Jersey man named Nicholas Malvania with assault, attempted assault, and aggravated harassment. According to the New York Post, Malvania claimed during his arraignment that he was trying to get Rexha to take a photo with his phone by participating in a TikTok trend that involves throwing one's phone onto a stage for a celebrity to snap a picture with. He allegedly told cops that he didn't mean to hit the singer, but according to a criminal complaint, he admitted that he was trying to hit Rexha with his phone because he thought it would be funny. It's unclear which, if any, versions of events is true. During an interview with the Post outside the courthouse several weeks later, Malvania's lawyer, Todd Spodek, said that the defense had not received any evidence to support the charges. He further stated that the defense was considering all relevant motions and that he anticipated a resolution short of trial, with all criminal charges being dropped. For now, Malvania remains free without bail pending the outcome of his case. 10. Ava Max. Just days after Bebe Rexha was hit in the face with a fan's cell phone in June of 2023, singer Ava Max was smacked in the face by an audience member during a concert in Los Angeles. Footage of the disturbing attack showed a man storming the stage and striking Ava in the middle of her performance, right as a security guard rushed after him and dragged him away. The singer was momentarily taken aback by the assault, but she finished her dance routine before exiting the stage. She later revealed that the man hit her so hard he scratched the inside of her eye. In a tweet, Ava reassured her followers that the disruptive guest was permanently banned from her concerts, and she thanked the rest of her LA fans for being a great audience. The recent assaults on Bebe Rexha and Ava Max came amid a concerning uptick in musicians being attacked by concertgoers. In the year leading up to the two incidents, several other singers had objects thrown at them while on stage. Harry Styles was hit in the eye with a Skittle and in the crotch with a water bottle, and Kelsey Ballerini was struck in the face with a bracelet during a concert in Idaho. Pink was shocked beyond words when someone threw what appeared to be cremated human ashes onto the stage during a performance in London, while Lil Nas X paused a live show in Sweden to address his audience about an adult toy that someone chucked in his direction. Other artists have been hit, grabbed, or full-on attacked by crazed audience members in recent times, including Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, and Justin Bieber. There's no clear cause for the disturbing trend, but there are theories. Speaking with Newsweek, Manhattan-based entertainment lawyer Frank Salzano speculated that the 24/7 connectivity and close access that fans feel that they have to celebrities may play a role in what he described as the false belief that they have a right to act out as they see fit. Salzano described the behavior as crossing a clear line of decency and in some instances rising to criminal behavior. He also predicted that these incidents will lead to heightened security and stricter rules at concerts. In other words, crazed fans who lack basic respect are at risk of ruining the fun of concerts not only for themselves, but for other members of the public who are there to innocently enjoy the show. 9. Seth Rollins. It's a bad idea to attack anybody because violence is wrong, but it's an especially bad idea to attack a professional wrestler. To most people, this statement would qualify as basic, obvious common sense. But one WWE fan apparently missed the obvious in 2021 when he attacked Seth Rollins during Monday Night Raw at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. Rollins was exiting the staging area after a match with Finn Balor when the overly excited spectator, later identified as 24-year-old Elisa Spencer, charged at him without warning from one of the front rows of the audience. In the blink of an eye, Rollins had Spencer in a headlock, and he had no apparent plans to release his grip as referees rushed over to the scene. When it comes to WWE, it's sometimes hard to tell whether an incident is staged or if it's real, but this was no pre-written storyline, and the reactions of Rollins, the referees, and everyone else involved were completely unplanned. Spencer's anger toward Rollins was also authentic. Speaking with the New York Daily News after the incident, Spencer apologized for his behavior and revealed that he had been catfished by someone who pretended to be Rollins online. The scammer kept the unsuspecting young man on the hook for 2 years, during which time Spencer sent the stranger around $3,000 in gift cards, believing that Rollins was going to help him advance his own wrestling ambitions. After learning Spencer's story and about the mental anguish he suffered at the hands of his catfisher, Rollins responded with sympathy rather than anger, stating that he hoped Spencer got the help he needed and that his mind was in a better place. While there were no hard feelings between the men, Spencer still had to answer in the court of law for his actions. He was charged with attempted assault and attempted violation of arts and cultural affairs, which is the legal term for disrupting a live sporting event. But the current status of the case is unclear. 8. Alexander Grekov. After the ongoing war in Ukraine brought many aspects of daily life to an abrupt halt in the country, a group of actors and actresses from the Lesia Ukrainka National Academic Drama Theatre got special permission to travel to Dublin, Ireland, where they performed a Ukrainian version of a play called Translations. After finishing their final performance one evening in June of 2023, actor Alexander Grekov was viciously assaulted by a group of 3 women and 2 men outside the Abbey Theatre. The 23-year-old was outside smoking when the attackers approached and snatched his cigarette out of his mouth. They also grabbed his pack of cigarettes. Grekov followed the thieves and asked them what they were doing, and they responded by smashing his head with a glass bottle. A woman also bit the actor during the assault. A spokeswoman for the acting group, Anastasia Pavlenko, later told Dublin Live that she didn't witness the attack, but she noticed Grekov's injuries immediately afterward. She described seeing a hole in the young man's head and a lot of blood. Grekov was taken to a nearby hospital, where he received stitches to the hole in his head and other injuries. He was in good spirits shortly after the attack, but the incident put a damper on the group's experience in Dublin. Speaking with Dublin Live, Pavlenko said that the group was shocked by the assault because up until that point the city's residents had been very nice. And while it was a bad way to end their tour, the spokeswoman praised emergency responders and other locals for being kind and helpful in the aftermath of the attack. In a statement, the Abbey Theatre condemned the unprovoked act of violence. Writing for Dublin Live, Irish politician Gary Cannon described the attack as just another stark reminder of how dangerous Dublin city centres become at night. He expressed additional horror over the fact that Grekov was visiting Ireland from a war-torn country when he was targeted by the group of thugs, and he was devastated that the assault would be the lasting impression of the city that the actor must have taken home with him. Gannon further pointed out that the assault came amid a disturbing spike in violence in Dublin, and that it served as an example of how dangerous the city's becoming. He called on public officials and agencies to take action and work together to clean up the streets and make Dublin safer for both residents and visitors. Unfortunately, it's unclear whether Grekov's attackers have been arrested. 7. Gigi Hadid. While leaving a runway show during Milan Fashion Week in 2016, American supermodel Gigi Hadid was approached from behind and lifted off the ground by a complete stranger. She immediately began jabbing her elbow straight back into the man's face, while her sister and fellow supermodel Bella Hadid yelled at him to let go of Gigi. The creepy stranger, later identified as a Ukrainian prankster named Vitaly Sedgwick, quickly let go of the young woman, who charged after him and angrily shouted at him until a security guard pulled her back. Sedgwick ran from the scene with his tail between his legs, and the incident was over just as soon as it began. It took some convincing, but security eventually persuaded Gigi to get into a car that was waiting for her. And after a while she finally agreed, but only after insisting that the guards find the man who had attacked her. Footage of the blonde bombshell's reaction to Sedgwick went viral, and Gigi received widespread praise for her quick thinking and highly effective response to the unwelcome advance. The 21-year-old later told writer Lena Dunham that she didn't even have time to think before she threw her elbows backwards. Thanks to her 2 years of boxing training, instinct kicked in, and her body just knew what to do. While most people were impressed with Gigi's handling of the incident, some criticized her for what one news outlet described as not model behavior. In a tweet, the model wrote that she had every right to defend herself against being manhandled. She also mentioned how fast he ran away. 6. Karen Fukuhara. As an alarming wave of anti-Asian crimes gripped the United States following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, actress Karen Fukuhara took to Instagram to share her experience after being targeted by the senseless hatred. The normally private 30-year-old, who's best known for starring in the action series The Boys, revealed that she had been hit in the back of the head while on her way to buy a coffee. After having her hat knocked off her head, Karen looked back to see who had hit her. She described her attacker as a random man, making it clear that the two didn't know each other and had no prior connections, and said that he continued walking after he struck her. Karen considered confronting her attacker, but she changed her mind after she noticed that it turned around and was heading in her direction. It simply wasn't worth the risk to her safety. The two strangers made eye contact for several moments while the man yelled at Karen, but afterward he walked away without further incident. It wasn't the first time the actress had experienced racism, but it was the first time she was ever physically attacked during a hate crime. After realizing that some of the people in her life may not realize that racially motivated attacks happen daily, Karen felt compelled to share her story in hopes of raising awareness. She also stressed the importance of holding perpetrators responsible for their hate crimes. At a time when anti-Asian attacks and other prejudice-related acts of violence seemed to be on the rise, Karen's post sparked an important dialogue about how to respond to these crimes and the urgent need for Americans to take a stand against hate. 5. Gavin DeGraw. After concluding a successful tour with Maroon 5 and Train during the summer of 2011, singer Gavin DeGraw returned to his home in New York City to relax and catch up with friends. At the end of a night out drinking at his favorite bar in Manhattan, he set out for the short walk home at around 4 a.m. But just a few blocks later, he was brutally attacked by a group of men he encountered on the street. DeGraw tried walking to the hospital, and he made it about a mile before someone called 911. He later told Us magazine that he'd tried calling for help, but he was bleeding so much that he was struggling to use his phone. The singer was picked up by an ambulance and was treated for a concussion, a broken nose, facial fractures, black eyes, and multiple cuts and bruises. During his interview with Us magazine, DeGraw said that he didn't remember much about the attack due to his concussion. He vaguely recalled the person who called 911 telling him that he'd been hit by a taxi cab, but he believed that the driver had simply seen how bloody he was and drove off without picking him up as he tried to hail a ride. DeGraw speculated that the taxi had maybe knocked him off balance and caused him to fall, but he knew it wasn't the main cause of his injuries. He said that he believed the altercation started when he reacted to a rude comment one of his attackers made in passing. And while he didn't remember the nature of the remark, DeGraw said that he was pretty sure he confronted the group and let them know that he didn't like what they said. In his words, the world wasn't big enough for all of us at that moment in time. While the singer credited the NYPD with taking the case seriously, no arrests were ever made. But DeGraw refused to live in fear or change his lifestyle after the incident, and he was grateful for the outpouring of support he received from fans and fellow musicians alike. 4. Lulu Taylor. While swimming off Clifton Beach in Cape Town, South Africa in early 2023, Raised by Wolves actress Lulu Taylor was assaulted by a rampaging seal pup. Footage of the attack showed the crazed creature charging toward a young boy, while fellow beachgoers ran over to pry the animal off of him. The seal then set its sights on Taylor, who didn't seem to hear the lifeguard's whistle or the people along the shore yelling for her to get out of the water. Taylor could be heard screaming at the top of her lungs while the creature clamped its jaws down on her. She tried unsuccessfully to fight the seal off. Prompting onlookers to rush to her aid. Good Samaritans pulled Taylor onto the beach while a man grabbed onto the seal and tossed it back out into the water. In an Instagram post describing the harrowing experience, the actress said that she was bitten 6 times and that she had to go to the emergency room for her injuries. She and 2 other swimmers received antibiotics and were treated for their wounds. And while the seal in the video didn't seem very big at first glance, Taylor's terrified shrieks and the severity of her injuries speak to the animal's destructive capabilities. Seal attacks on humans are rare, but these incidents are on the rise in certain parts of the world, including along the South African coast. According to experts, the unusually aggressive behavior is most likely caused by a poisonous algae bloom that releases a neurotoxin called domoic acid into the water. While the algae seems to have no ill effects on fish, it causes the brains of seals and sea lions to swell, resulting in an array of unusual effects. The behavior ranges from comatose and lethargic to hyperactive and disorientated. While the experience was undoubtedly traumatic for Taylor, she said that she still loves the ocean and all of its animals. She also speculated that climate change may be causing the noticeable spike in cases of mammals being affected by the toxic algae bloom. 3. Amand Dalal. In a terrifying act of violence that was partially captured on camera in early 2023, a hatchet-wielding madman attacked Punjabi actor Amand Dalal outside of Planet Fitness in Corona, California, roughly 50 miles east of Los Angeles. During what began as a regular morning for gym members, Dalal rushed into the business covered in blood. The 41-year-old model-turned-actor had been stabbed several times by the suspect, who authorities later identified as 30-year-old Ronald Chand, and was seeking help. Chand rushed into the gym after Dalal and held him at knife point while screaming irrationally. But without stopping to think twice about their own safety, 4 nearby gym goers sprang into action and took the suspect to the ground, enabling Dalal to escape from his attacker. The Good Samaritans took Chand's hatchet and knife away and held him on the ground until police arrived. One of the men who helped subdue the suspect later said that he believed he smelled methamphetamine on Chand. And if that were true, it might explain the multiple nonsensical statements Chand made throughout the ordeal, including "please respect us," "give me water," and "you want to take advantage of me." Dalal was taken to a nearby hospital where he received stitches and staples for multiple stab wounds to his head and body. Thankfully though, his injuries were none life-threatening. In the meantime, Chan was booked into custody on an attempted murder charge, and he remains behind bars on $1 million bail. In a social media update, Dalal shared footage of his healing injuries and thanked his followers for their support as he continued along his journey to recovery. 2. Shakira. During an afternoon stroll at a park in Barcelona in 2021, the pop singer Shakira and her young son were attacked by a pair of wild boars. In a series of alarming Instagram posts, the Colombian crooner described how the crazed creatures ran off into the woods with her purse. Determined not to let the thieving mammals get away with their crime, Shakira managed to retrieve her bag, but by the time she got it back, it was destroyed. Luckily, the singer and her son weren't seriously injured. While this may sound like a freak incident, it actually reflects a disturbing spike in wild boar attacks on humans that have occurred in Spain in recent years. According to the BBC, the free-roaming mammals are considered one of the world's most invasive species due to their remarkable ability to survive in almost any environment. They tend to thrive especially well in cities, where they feed on the endless supply of human-produced garbage. In 2016 alone, Spanish police received nearly 1,200 complaints about disruptive boars holding up traffic, eating out of pet feeders, and attacking humans and their animal companions. That number's only increased in recent years as the boars become increasingly aggressive and dangerous. And the problem isn't only happening in Spain. It's become an issue throughout much of Europe, where the population was estimated at 10 million or more in 2021. In addition to being aggressive, wild boars are known to carry a variety of diseases, putting human populations at risk of contracting potentially deadly zoonotic viruses and potentially triggering another pandemic. Simply put, it's not safe for humans to live in close proximity to the creatures. Most people seem to agree that they want the boars out of their living environment, but there are differing opinions on how to deal with the problem. Numerous European cities have introduced culling programs, which is a polite term for killing enough boar to get the population down to a manageable level. But these solutions have proven to be controversial due to a handful of headlining cases, including an officer who accidentally shot their partner while trying to kill a boar, and another incident where law enforcement shot tranquilizer darts at a boar inside of a children's playground. 1. Pauley Perrette. Even if you don't know the actress Pauley Perrette by name, you may have seen her on the CBS series NCIS as the character Abby Sciuto, whom she portrayed from 2003 until 2018. For a celebrity, she's maintained a relatively low profile over the years thanks to her drama-free lifestyle. Perrette has always been selective about how much of her life she shares with the public. But in an unusual display of openness in 2015, she revealed that she'd been assaulted outside her Hollywood Hills home by a homeless man with a violent criminal history. In a tweet, the actress described how she was walking across the street to a nearby property that she'd recently purchased when her very psychotic attacker jumped her out of nowhere. The suspect grabbed Perrette's arm and held on to her while repeatedly punching her in the nose and forehead. And the whole time he kept telling her that he was going to kill her. At some point during the assault, the man yelled that his name was William. He told Perrette not to forget it and once again threatened to kill her. In an attempt to calm her attacker down, Perrette said that William was a beautiful name and that it was her nephew's name. Then, after delivering one final blow to her face, the man released the terrified actress and said, "Get out of here." Perrette said that she collapsed on a sidewalk nearby and called a friend to pick her up after a passerby ignored her. The passerby later clarified that he didn't realize Perrette was in distress and that he walked past her because he simply thought she was homeless and disheveled. He said he would have stopped if he'd realized that Perrette needed help and wished her a speedy recovery. Using a sketch of the suspect that Perrette made, her friend James tracked the attacker down. James alerted the police to the suspect's whereabouts and they took him into custody on felony counts of false imprisonment by violence and making a criminal threat. Jail records identified the alleged attacker as 45-year-old David Mack. He was ultimately deemed incompetent to stand trial and was ordered to undergo inpatient treatment at a mental health facility until he's deemed to no longer pose a threat to society. During an interview with Entertainment Tonight, Perrette said that she harbors no ill will towards her attacker. She said that her heart breaks for people who are living on the street without the help that they need, and that the experience was a wake-up call that motivated her to call for more outreach and resources for the homeless population. 7. Rachel Wadley. Rachel Wadley, rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine's girlfriend, was arrested on August 28, 2022 for reportedly punching her boyfriend in the face while outside a club in Miami. The 25-year-old Instagram star, who's better known as Jade, had been dating the rapper for 4 years when the incident took place. According to police, the couple was kicked out of a fancy restaurant called Kiki on the River before getting into an argument outside the establishment. Tekashi, who was born Daniel Hernandez, then apparently told officers afterward that Rachel had punched him. When police arrived at the scene, they noticed that the rapper had a minor injury on his cheek, purportedly from his girlfriend's fist. A security guard that had witnessed the entire encounter then corroborated this notion by stating that Rachel had thrown several punches at the controversial music star. There are also claims that the woman had yanked on Tekashi's chain around his neck. Rachel was arrested on charges of battery related to the domestic violence incident. She was initially held at a Miami-Dade County jail on a $1,500 bail. However, despite their differences, Tekashi told TMZ that he was working to free his girlfriend from behind bars. It's not exactly known if the couple is still together or not, but it's clear that they have a volatile relationship, one that's likely fueled by booze and drugs based on Tekashi's bizarre appearance alone. 6. Tommy Lee. In February 1998, Pamela Anderson's then-husband Tommy Lee was arrested for several crimes, including child and spousal abuse and unlawful possession of a firearm. This may come as no surprise nowadays. Pam aired out her relationship with the co-founder and drummer for heavy metal band Motley Crue when she released her Netflix docu-series called Pam: A Love Story back in late January 2022. But when news broke of the violent exchanges between the Hollywood couple in the late 1990s, people were shocked to learn what was really going on behind closed doors. Pam and Tommy first met each other on New Year's Eve in 1994. The two of them had apparently visited the same bar with their separate friend groups, and Pam got Tommy's attention by sending him a shot of Goldschlager. The drummer then went over and introduced himself to the blonde bombshell, who he described as radiantly standing out from everyone around her. Then, according to Tommy's pal Guerin Swing, who was interviewed by The Sun, after hitting it off, Tommy licked Pam's face from chin to temple. This bizarre public display of affection seemed to have a lasting effect on the Playboy model, because 2 months later, Pam and Tommy got married on a beach in Cancun after embarking on a whirlwind romance. The nuptials were a rather casual affair, as the pair were photographed exchanging their rings in their bathing suits, with Pam opting to replace a white wedding dress with a white bikini. From there, the couple went on to have 2 sons, and despite a tiff between them in November 1996 when Pamela filed for divorce, they stayed together and seemed to be quite in love based on ample photographs of them looking head over heels for each other. But in February 1998, the fairy tale romance was exposed to be a lie when Pam reported Tommy's violent behavior to the police. Pam, once again, filed for divorce that same year on February 26th, 2 days after her husband was arrested. The altercation was later revealed as Pam described the final straw that broke their marriage in her 2023 book, Love, Pamela. Tommy had apparently grown jealous of Pam's Baywatch co-star, David Chikachi, who she shared a kiss with in the last season of the show. But the drummer's jealousy turned into a blind rage one night when he reportedly kicked his then-wife while she had their infant son in her arms. Tommy then grabbed Pamela's phone out of her hand before twisting her arm violently, tearing off one of the actress's nails in the process, causing her to bleed. This is eventually what led Pam to report Tommy to the police, although surely there was more going on than this isolated incident. On May 21, 1998, Tommy was sentenced to 6 months behind bars after being found guilty of beating Pam. However, the child abuse charges that were brought against him were dropped, and shortly after, their divorce was finalized. 5. Paul Snider. Canadian model and actress Dorothy Stratton, who was legally born Dorothy Ruth Hoogstraden, was murdered on August 14, 1980 by her manager and estranged husband, Paul Snider. The couple had been on the rocks for quite some time leading up to the incident, as they were in the process of breaking business ties and divorcing one another. Stratton had started to move on with her life and had embarked on a new relationship with director Peter Bogdanovich, with whom she was living in Los Angeles with when Snider broke into their shared estate with a handgun. On that night, July 31, 1980, Snider laid in wait for Stratton, hiding among the shadows of the property. But after hours of inactivity, he decided to leave. Then, a week later, Stratton and Snider met up with each other for the first time in almost 3 months at the former home they shared together in West LA. Snider was hoping that the two of them could reconcile their relationship, but Stratton hit him with the harsh news that she had fallen in love with Bogdanovich and wished to finalize their separation. After their meeting on August 8, 1980, Snider was forced to return the handgun he'd borrowed from an acquaintance. But over the next few days, the man would become obsessed with getting another firearm. He even went as far as to ask the private detective he'd hired to purchase a machine gun for him, since he'd been denied due to his Canadian citizenship. But the detective refused, and rightfully so, because at that point Snyder wasn't in his best state of mind. Unfortunately though, Snyder would come to possess a 12-gauge shotgun that he bought from a private seller he'd discovered in a local classified ad, acquiring it on August 13th. Later that same evening, Snyder reportedly told friends that he was going to take up hunting, which is eerie considering what he did the next day. At around noon on August 14th, Stratton showed up for an arranged meeting with Snyder at the man's rented home in LA. Before arriving, Stratton spoke with her business manager about the amount of property settlement that she'd offer her then-husband during her meetup with him that afternoon. The actress wanted to handle things like adults and even told her business manager that she wanted to be friends with Snyder after everything had settled down, but things didn't go how she planned. At 8 p.m. that same day, Snyder's two roommates returned to the house they shared with the Canadian nightclub promoter to find Stratton's car still parked in the driveway. Upon entering the home, they noticed Snyder's bedroom was locked and Stratton was nowhere to be seen. Assuming the married couple had reconciled and just wanted some privacy, they spent the next couple of hours watching TV in the living room, not knowing the gruesome scene that waited for them behind the long door. However, after receiving a distressing phone call from Snyder's private detective shortly after 11 p.m., the roommates forced their way into Snyder's room and discovered both Stratton and Snyder lying naked and lifeless on the bed. The police timeline placed Stratton's murder as occurring within 1 hour of her arrival at the home. Snyder then turned the weapon on himself about an hour after he killed his wife. The news of his girlfriend's murder absolutely broke Bogdanovich, who apparently had to be sedated after learning the gruesome details of her death. Her family was also heartbroken and surprised that Snyder could carry out such an evil crime. Stratton's body was later cremated, and her remains were buried at the Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in LA. But the woman's memory lives on in the movies she starred in and the lives she touched throughout her short but successful career. 4. Bryn Hardman. Phil Hardman worked as a graphic designer in the early stages of his career before quickly gaining fame and notoriety after making a name for himself in the comedy scene. After impressing the iconic Groundlings troupe when he volunteered to go on stage during one of their performances in LA, he was invited to join their traveling comedy group. Not only did he prove himself to be a natural showman, but an excellent writer as well. He even went on to come up with the well-known character Pee Wee Herman with actor Paul Reubens. Then, in 1986, Hartman landed his dream job as a cast member of Saturday Night Live, where he showcased his comedic talent and became an instant success. By the time he left the show in 1994, he had won an Emmy for his writing and had been nominated for another as an impressive member of SNL. Hartman also played a recurring character on the hit TV show The Simpsons. However, despite the man's on-screen success, Hartman's love life proved to be more difficult. For a brief period of time between 1970 and 1972, he'd been married, and then in 1982, he tied the knot again, but it didn't work out any better for him this time, and he split from his then-wife 3 years later in 1985. And although Hartman was known for his electric personality and charisma on stage, he was far more low-key offstage, sometimes even to a fault. Heartbroken and defeated after his divorce from his second wife Lisa Jarvis, Hartman began to look for a new companion. And it didn't take long for him to meet his soon-to-be third wife, Bryn Omdal. According to Hartman's biographer, Mike Rogers, the comedian's relationships always started out very intensely, both emotionally and sexually, but eventually these flings would fizzle out. However, things seemed to be different this time, and after meeting each other on a blind date in 1986, Hartman and Bryn married just a year later. The entertainer's friends and family reported that he'd never been happier than he was in the mid-1990s, which made sense considering that Bryn had made Hartman a father by giving birth to their 2 children, a girl named Bergen and a son named Shaun. But in reality, things weren't all sunshine and roses, because it was later evident that Bryn had grown jealous of Hartman's ample success after her own modeling and acting career failed to get off the ground. The man's reclusive behavior was also an apparent factor in the pair's relationship issues. Months went by, and the couple began arguing constantly. And although they'd typically make up after fighting, they'd always be at each other's throats shortly after reconciling. Bryn, in particular, had trouble controlling her rage, and she seemed to thrive off of the attention she received when she'd lose her temper. On several occasions, things got so bad between the couple that Hartman was forced to restrain his volatile wife. And after a while, Hartman became so drained from the constant bickering and explosive outbursts from Bryn that instead of trying to mend things, he'd end their fights by walking away and going to bed. But without a resolution, things only grew worse, and eventually Bryn began to abuse alcohol and cocaine after being sober for years. By late May 1998, Bryn had spent several small stints in rehab facilities, where she tried to kick her addiction to drugs and alcohol, substances that seemed to fuel her violent tendencies. But things didn't get any better, and on the evening of May 27th, Bryn took her pent-up anger out on Hartman. That night, the woman had 2 drinks and initially didn't seem to be upset. But then, a fight sparked between the couple for unknown reasons, causing Hartman to retreat to their bedroom. However, things didn't end there. At roughly 2 a.m. the next morning, Bryn retrieved one of the couple's guns from their metal lockbox. She then ambushed Hartman as he was sleeping in bed and shot him multiple times in the chest and head. Unfortunately, Hartman died instantly. Later that day, Bryn confessed to her pal Ron Douglas that she'd murdered her husband. In hysterics, she then also called her friend Judy, who, upon hearing the news, hightailed it to the home Hartman shared with Bryn and their children. Douglas reported the crime to the police, who showed up at the residence and removed 9-year-old Shaun and 6-year-old Bergen from the house. Bryn, however, had locked herself in the bedroom she'd killed Hartman in and called her sister to tell her what happened. But when the police started to bang on the door for her to come out, she hung up the phone and ended her own life. 3. Jesse James. In 2007, while married to Sandra Bullock, Jesse James was hit with a fine of $271,250 by the California Air Resources Board, CARB, who claimed that the man's custom motorcycles had egregiously violated the Golden State's clean air laws. The illegal bikes were reportedly sold between 1998 and 2005, and according to California air regulators, these choppers were producing 10 times the legal limits of hydrocarbons allowed in the state. Investigators also found that Jesse's monster bikes didn't have state-certified emissions equipment on their fuel systems and exhaust. However, in a statement that was released by the man's publicist, Jesse, who was 37 years old at the time, said he was offended by the disclosure of the fine given to him by CARB. He also noted that the Air Police never responded to his offer to make the motorcycles he sold from his company, West Coast Choppers, more compliant with California's federal emission standards. Jesse felt that it was suspicious for an organization like CARB to put out press releases describing the cash settlement they were expecting to receive from West Coast Choppers. In another public statement addressing the issue, Jesse said, "If their CARB's intentions were really focused on the environment, they surely would have taken my offer to make all of the non-compliant motorcycles meet federal EPA standards." But according to him, the organization never accepted his offer and was instead only interested in the cash settlement. But despite his ill feelings toward CARB, Jesse ended up paying the hefty fine. But Jesse's business troubles weren't the only issues in his life. After marrying Sandra Bullock in 2005, the two seemed to have a good relationship with one another. But by 2010, things were beginning to take a turn for the worse. On March 17th, an interview with the model and Michelle Bombshell McGee was printed in Touch magazine, which titled the cover story, "The Ultimate Betrayal." Throughout the interview, the model detailed her 11-month affair with Jesse, which had allegedly taken place while Bullock was filming The Blind Side. The next day, Jesse issued a public apology to his then-wife and his 3 children, although he claimed that most of the allegations brought against him were untrue. But this denial to take accountability for his actions would soon come back to bite him, because over the next week or so, several more women would come forward and claim to have had adulterous relations with him. The second woman, Melissa Smith, told Star magazine that she'd carried on an affair with Jussie for 2 years. And the third woman, Brigitte Daguerre, aired out her relationship with Jussie, which allegedly began in 2008, to TMZ. By April 2010, 5 women had accused Jussie of being unfaithful to Bullock, which ultimately broke the Hollywood couple's relationship. The man's 5th mistress, Marilee Girth, also ended up suing him for sexual harassment following their alleged affair. Sandra Bullock eventually filed for divorce in late April of that same year, but their legal separation wasn't finalized until June 2012. Nowadays, Bullock seems to be doing quite well for herself, and she started dating a new man, Brian Randall. And although the new couple seems to be doing well, it'll likely take a while before Bullock's ready to fully commit to someone again by marrying them, given her past track record with unfaithful men, aka Jesse James. 2. Sean Penn. On the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2012, Madonna opened up about her volatile relationship with film director and actor Sean Penn. During the interview, Madonna confirmed that during their marriage, Penn had physically abused her, claiming that the man would choke her, hit her, and on one occasion, he tied her to a chair and then beat her with a hairbrush. The Vogue singer then went on to say that she felt like a prisoner during her 4-year marriage to Penn. Following a whirlwind romance that was highly publicized, the pair got married in 1985. But after less than 5 years together, the couple called it quits and went their separate ways, finalizing their divorce in 1989. But what exactly happened to end their relationship had always been up for debate until Madonna addressed her marriage to Penn with Oprah in 2012. Their separation was announced after tabloids started to run stories about how Penn had trussed Madonna up like a turkey before he beat and assaulted her in a drunken rage one night in December of 1988. On that alleged night, Madonna, who was apparently still bloodied from her altercation with her husband, filed an assault complaint against Penn with the LA Sheriff's Department. And as a result, the film director was arrested. The complaint against Penn was later withdrawn by Madonna, although the couple's relationship was never the same again. Penn's reputation had already begun to deteriorate before these spousal abuse claims surfaced due to his frequent violent interactions with the paparazzi. He even pleaded guilty in 1985 to 2 counts of battery and assault against a reporter from the UK, crimes for which he was sentenced to jail for 90 days. And in a more serious case, while filming a movie in Macau in 1986, he dangled a photographer who'd hidden in his hotel room over his 9th floor balcony upon finding him. For this, Penn was charged with attempted murder. However, the actor later reportedly broke out of jail and fled Macau on a jet ski, and eventually he was given a pardon by the Portuguese government. So, as you can tell, Sean Penn has a serious anger problem, and it comes as no surprise to find out that he directed some of his anger at his former wife Madonna. Although it's hard to hear stories of abuse, it's important to know what's acceptable in a relationship. And hopefully, if anyone watching this video is dealing with any kind of domestic violence, they'll find the strength to walk away from the situation. 1. Tommy Mottola. Singing for Mariah Carey has always been a form of escapism, and according to her, writing is a form of processing. And in Mariah's memoir, The Meaning of Mariah Carey, she describes exactly what she's had to process in the past, including a long history of infidelity, domestic abuse, and racism. The singer has admitted in the past that she largely owes her successful career to the boss of Columbia Records and Sony Music, Tommy Mottola. But in her memoir, she describes how trusting Mottola came at a heavy price. The two met each other in person at a Manhattan music industry party in 1988, after Mariah had given Columbia Records a demo tape of her singing. And upon hearing the woman's immense talent, Mottola searched for Mariah for 2 weeks before finally meeting her in Manhattan. Mariah was just 18 years old at the time, and Mottola was 21 years her senior, but he was the first wealthy man to sweep the young singer off her feet. Showering her with luxury instead of love, the two began to date. And in 1993, Mariah married Mottola after he proposed to her with a Cartier diamond ring. But not surprisingly, their relationship didn't last long, and the couple split in 1997, due in part to Mottola's controlling personality. And while things seemed amicable following their divorce, Mariah paints a much different picture of her marriage with the music industry boss in her memoir. She explained in the book how Mottola basically imprisoned her in their 50-acre estate, which she dubbed Sing Sing, referencing the local prison in Ossining, New York. The singer claims that she was constantly monitored and that everything, including the music she listened to, was controlled by Mottola. She described the man's presence in the memoir as dense and oppressive, and she also stated that his power was pervasive and that it came with an unspeakable unease. Mariah finally found the courage to leave Mottola when one night in front of his friends, he held a butter knife to her cheek and dragged it down her cheek menacingly after hearing of her desire to leave him. Their divorce was eventually finalized in 1998, but since then, Mariah's been doing quite well for herself. She's continued to work on her music, and she even went on to date other high-profile celebrities like Nick Cannon and Derek Jeter. Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see ya in the next one. Bye guys!